This lesson is Unit 8, Section 2, Laws that led to civil rights reform during the Progressive Era. Earlier, we've talked about the Civil War and the results of the Civil War, which included passage of the 13th Amendment, which freed the slaves, 14th Amendment, which granted citizenship, and the 15th Amendment, which granted the right to vote. We also talked about two terms, one called de jure and another called de facto. And we discovered that de jure meant by law and de facto meant in reality. So what does this mean? Sure, African Americans were free. Sure, they had civil rights. And sure, they could vote, at least African American men could, but did they really, de facto, in reality, did they actually enjoy these rights? Well, in 1896, the Supreme Court decided in a court case presented to it by this gentleman, Denmark Plessy, challenged a law in the state of Louisiana that said that African Americans had to ride on one train car while white Americans would ride in separate train cars. He purposely went and sat in a white railroad car and was then removed and arrested for doing so. He challenged it before this Supreme Court and lost the decision. The Supreme Court upheld the Louisiana law that it was legal to separate the races. This term, separate, another word for it is segregation. Many segregation laws began to be passed in the South as a result of Plessy versus Ferguson. Here are just a few examples. These laws came to be known as Jim Crow laws, as shown in this political cartoon here. Most whites believed that African Americans were clueless, ignorant, and did not really care that their lives were being restricted by these laws. And so the laws themselves were named after this political cartoon, which this political cartoon was referred to as Jim Crow. Here are some pictures showing the way that facilities in the South were segregated. Here's a separate water fountain. Notice the signs, colored and white. Here's a picture of a colored waiting room. Here's a picture of a African American school. Typically, white schools would get the best facilities, or would be the best facilities, and the African American schools would get the leftovers. The leftover textbooks, the leftover chalk, any leftover paper, and oftentimes were not taught by qualified teachers. Also, segregation even extended into the entertainment industry. This is a picture of a musical instrument and makeup. African American music, African American culture had found its way into mainstream American culture, but even the musicians who portrayed traditional African American music could not even perform in front of white audiences. So oftentimes white musicians would paint blackface on and participate in the entertainment industry. All of this segregation was challenged by a new social movement in the United States, reform movement in the United States, and it all started at Niagara Falls in New York. It became known as the Niagara Movement. A civil rights organization was born there known as the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And it was first led by the nation's first African American with a doctorate degree, and his name was W.E.B. Du Bois. W.E.B. Du Bois challenged the idea that African Americans should be treated equally, and this change should occur immediately. He is going to be opposed by another African American leader named Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington's argument is that equality should be gradual, and it should occur at the same time that African Americans achieved economic equality. Another way of saying that is that political equality for African Americans would come once economic equality occurred. W.E.B. Du Bois, on the other hand, the gentleman pictured here, believed that the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th Amendments granted African Americans that, and so they deserved it immediately and should not have to wait for that. This concludes Unit 8, Section 2, lesson on changes in the civil